Okay guys, so this past week we heard the news that Captain America Civil War was doing a For Your Consideration campaign. Now what this is exactly, to make it simplified, is a campaign to bring awareness to the movie for the Oscars. Now of course the Oscars are going to be coming up early next year, and of course the Oscars are one of the, highest form of recognition for films. Now whether you agree with the Oscars or not, or whether you watch them every year or not and like what they're doing, that's your own personal preference. I'm not the biggest fan of the Oscars. There's always those movies that target the Oscars specifically called Oscar baits, and those are guaranteed to win because that's their purpose. You're never going to see a movie like, for example, I'm not saying this deserves every Oscar, but I'm just going to say it because it's off the top of my head because I really enjoy the movie. You're never gonna see a movie like The Witch go out there and sweep the Oscars. Why? One, it's a horror movie and those movies aren't going to win all these insane Oscars. Two, it's not a movie that includes so many big name actors, like standing around, like scowling at the camera, doing acting, and that's why people overlook them. Now, when it comes to comic book movies, many people have said multiple times they should really build some sort of category where these movies and movies like this should get recognition. I mean, let's take for example a movie like Captain America the Winter Soldier, which many people will argue is one of the best comic book movies of all time and one of the best action movies in the last decade. That movie pretty much didn't win anything, well, because it's a comic book movie, and a lot of people are getting pissed that, these movies are getting overlooked just because the crowd that votes for these are like 70-year-old people that are running Hollywood and they don't understand what today's audience is into. It's kind of like when you're listening to your music and, like your older relative looks at you and goes, "Oh, that stuff is crap. You should be listening to this." And you're like, "Yo, well, listen, I respect Frank Sinatra, alright? But I can't go to the club and fist bump to Frank Sinatra." I've literally had this conversation with my relatives. So, it's that type of thing. They've grown up in a different age and they don't understand what today's level of filmmaking and what today's acceptance is. So let's just get it right out of the way. There's no way in hell Civil War is even considered for Best Picture. Despite it being, probably the best comic book movie this year, and it's surprisingly making sense with what's happening, it's probably not going to get any mention in that. But there are a few Oscars I could actually see it showing up for. So quickly, I think it could be up for Best Sound Mixing, Sound Editing, Best Costume Design. It definitely has a chance on getting in there. It's not going to win. Best Cinematography, that could be possible. Best Film Editing, I think there is a shot at that. Best Visual Effects, 100%, and this could be the one it takes home. And then there's Best Writing and Adapted Screenplay. Honestly, the way they adapted Civil War in this is, I think, a perfect transition from the comic to the actual, format and the medium of a film. I think there's a lot that they left out, obviously, but it's an adaptation. They didn't just clone it. They made it their own, and the fact that they were able to cram so many characters into one and make it coherent when the actual Avengers movie couldn't do it, I think gives them a very possible shot at doing it. Now, with that in mind, I will say I want you guys to let me know, what are your feelings on the Oscars? Do you guys feel as I do that all these old dudes that are in there and old women that are like 80, 90 running this thing, these guys need to go, right? They need to go. And I'm not saying make it more like MTV. I'm not saying, hey, go out there and make it more like the Fans' Choice Awards. No, that's a dumb idea too, because at the end of the day, you're going to have Green Lantern win Best Movie of the Year again. And what? But there needs to be some sort of thing where we get like people like J.J. Abrams, right? People like, younger people like Duncan Jones, people like Neil Blomkamp. These guys should be the ones that are there. The guys that are built up Hollywood in the last 15 years with all the iconic imagery we know. I think it should be those guys. Maybe that's just me, but you guys can let me know your thoughts on it down below.